Hey guys, tonight we're taking a journey to a place so vast and so quiet, it practically hums with serenity. Imagine, if you will, that you're standing on an endless expanse of grass, stretching out in every direction, meeting a sky so big it feels like a giant, soft blanket draped over the world. The air is crisp, carrying the faint, earthy scent of distant campfire smoke, and maybe, just maybe, the gentle snort of a horse somewhere in the distance. This isn't just any vast open space. This is the Mongol Steppe, a land where the wind whispers tales older than written history, and where the rhythm of life moved to the slow, steady beat of hooves and the turning of seasons. You're about to step into the peaceful journey of nomads, people who truly mastered the art of living lightly upon the earth, leaving little trace but the faint echo of their passing. Now, you might think, peaceful journey on the steppe. Wasn't it all, Genghis Khan and conquering and such? And yes, that's part of the story. But tonight, we're focusing on the quiet, often overlooked side of nomadic life, the daily routines, the ingenious solutions, and the surprising tranquility that came with always being on the move. It's a bit like trying to sleep on a particularly bouncy bus, but with more sheep and less honking. You probably won't survive a single night out there without proper gear. But don't worry, you're safely tucked in for this ride. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like it, let me know your location and what time it is for you right now in the comments. It's always cool to see where you're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Our story begins not with a bang, but with a gentle rustle of grass underfoot. You are, in this moment, a nomad, not a fierce warrior, not a world-conquering leader, but an ordinary person living an extraordinary life. Your world is defined by the horizon, by the ever-changing sky, and by the needs of your animals. This fundamental connection to the land is a mainstream historical fact often overshadowed by the more dramatic events associated with steppe peoples. It's a connection born out of necessity and deepened by generations of intimate knowledge of the environment. You instinctively know the subtle shifts in wind, the nuances of cloud formations, and the best places for grazing, even when your eyes are half closed with sleep. Life on the steppe was, by modern standards, a masterclass in minimalism. You didn't have permanent cities or vast agricultural fields to tie you down. Instead, your wealth was measured in livestock, sheep, goats, cattle, camels, and of course, horses. These animals weren't just food or transport. They were your family, your livelihood, and the very reason for your existence. They provided milk, meat, wool for clothing and shelter, and their very movement dictated your own. It's a bit like having a house that also happens to be your car, your pantry, and your wardrobe, all rolled into one living, breathing, sometimes baying package. This close, almost symbiotic relationship with their animals, particularly the horse, is a quirky or fringe tidbit that many overlook when thinking about nomadic empires. It wasn't just about riding, it was about living through and with them. The seasons, not a calendar, dictated your movements. Spring meant the promise of new grass and newborn animals, signaling a gentle move to fresh pastures. Summer was a time of abundance, but also of preparing for the colder months. Autumn, a crucial period, involved fattening the herds and gathering resources before the inevitable. Quiet descent into winter, often spent in more sheltered valleys. This cyclical migration, known as transhumance, wasn't a random wandering, but a carefully orchestrated dance with nature. Historians still argue whether the earliest nomadic movements were driven purely by resource scarcity or by a more complex social and economic calculus. But what is clear is that this continuous movement kept the land healthy and the animals well fed. You, as a nomad, would feel this rhythm deep in your bones, a constant low hum of anticipation and adaptation. It's the original work-from-anywhere lifestyle, except your office was 1,000 miles wide and powered by grass. As the sun gently arcs across the vast, empty sky, you begin to understand the quiet artistry of early nomadic life. It wasn't about conquering distant lands, not yet, anyway. It was about mastering the art of survival and flourishing in a landscape that demanded constant adaptability. Imagine waking up to the soft sounds of your herd stirring, the gentle bleating of sheep, the low moo of a cow, and the comforting, rhythmic chewing. Your first task of the day, even before the sun fully clears the horizon, might be to check on the animals, their well-being intrinsically linked to your own. You'd observe their health, note any new births, and perhaps lead them to a fresh patch of dukist grass. This continuous, intuitive interaction with the livestock forms the bedrock of their existence, a quiet testament to a life lived in harmony with the natural world. You learn to read the animals as if they were books, the way a sheep holds its head, the slight twitch of a horse's ear, the determined march of a camel. Each tells a story about the weather, the grazing, or potential dangers. It's a knowledge passed down through generations, not through textbooks or formal schooling, but through observation, mimicry, and the constant, gentle rhythm of daily tasks. You'd probably laugh at the thought of a 9-to-5 job. Your workday is from sunup to sundown, and often through the night, with watchful eyes and ears. But it's not the relentless grind of a factory floor. It's a fluid, intuitive engagement with your environment, punctuated by moments of profound stillness. This lifestyle, while seemingly simple, held a remarkable level of sophistication. For instance, the quirky or fringe tidbit of how they handled milk. You might think, just drink it, right? But no, nomads rarely drank fresh milk. Instead, they processed it into a dizzying array of products: fermented mare's milk, dried curds, cheese, and butter. This not only preserved the milk in a land without refrigeration, but also concentrated its nutrients, providing vital energy for their mobile lives. Imagine trying to explain the concept of a refrigerator to someone who views dried horse milk as peak innovation. Oh, you just keep it cold for how long? Our food moves with us. Thank you very much. Historians still argue whether the invention of specific dairy processing techniques arose from pure necessity or from a deeper cultural connection to their animals. Your day would involve a myriad of small, essential tasks. The women would be busy processing milk, preparing food, and repairing felt for the yurt. The men would tend to the herd, hunt if necessary, and ensure the safety of the encampment. Children, from a young age, would be integrated into these routines. Learning by doing. There's no kids' table on the steppe. Everyone contributes. You'd find yourself expertly handling a lamb, or maybe even learning to ride a horse before you could properly walk. It's an immersive education, one that teaches resilience, resourcefulness, and a deep respect for the unforgiving beauty of the land. Even something as mundane as collecting fuel was an art form. With few trees on the open steppe, you wouldn't be gathering firewood. Instead, you'd be collecting dried animal dung, known as argol. Now, before you wrinkle your nose, argol burns hot and clean, with a surprisingly pleasant, earthy aroma. It's a sustainable, readily available fuel source that perfectly complements their mobile existence. Imagine telling your modern self that your cozy fire tonight is fueled by yesterday's dinner. It's a practical solution born out of ingenious adaptation to their environment, making the most of every resource. It sounds odd, but it truly is a mainstream historical fact that argol was their primary fuel. It's nature's perfectly prepackaged, renewable energy source. And it means less chopping wood, which, let's be honest, is a win for anyone who likes a leisurely morning. As evening approaches, you'd gather around a small fire, the smoke curling up into the vast sky. Perhaps someone tells a story, or a quiet song is sung. The pace slows, mirroring the setting sun. There's a profound sense of peace that comes with this simple, unburdened existence, where your daily concerns are tangible and immediate. You're not worrying about mortgage payments or traffic jams. Your focus is on the health of your animals, the quality of the grazing, and the well-being of your family. This simplicity, paradoxically, brought a richness to life. Historians still debate whether the perceived hardship of nomadic life outweighs the undeniable freedoms and communal strengths it fostered. But for you, drifting off to sleep under the endless stars, the answer seems clear. As you settle into the rhythm of this ancient existence, one structure dominates your temporary home, the yurt. Now, this isn't just any tent. It's a masterpiece of nomadic engineering, a portable home perfectly designed for a life of constant movement. Imagine a circular dwelling, its framework, a latticework of wooden poles, expanding and contracting like an accordion. Over this skeletal frame, layers of felt-thick, insulating mats made from sheep's wool are meticulously draped and tied down. The result? A remarkably cozy, weather-resistant, and surprisingly spacious shelter. You might feel a gentle breeze seeping in around the edges, but inside, the air is still and holds the warmth of the central hearth. It's the original tiny home, but with the added bonus of being able to pack it up and move it every few weeks. The genius of the yurt lies in its simplicity and efficiency. It can be dismantled and packed onto a few camels or horses within a couple of hours, and then reassembled just as quickly at the next grazing ground. This ease of transport is a mainstream historical fact that allowed nomadic groups to follow their herds and seasonal pastures without the burden of permanent settlements. Think about your own home. Could you pack it up and move it across a steppe in a day? Probably not, unless you live in a very large backpack. The felt insulation, often several layers thick, provides excellent protection against the biting winds of winter and the scorching sun of summer. It's an ancient form of climate control, relying purely on natural materials and clever design. At the very center of the yurt, you'll find the hearth, the heart of the home. This is where meals are cooked, water is boiled, and warmth radiates, especially during the long, cold steppe nights. The smoke escapes through an opening at the top, covered by a felt flap that can be adjusted to control ventilation. This opening, known as the tuno or smoke hole, also serves as a natural skylight, allowing sunlight to stream in during the day and offering a perfect view of the stars at night. You lie there, listening to the crackle of the fire, watching the constellations slowly wheel across the patch of sky visible through the opening. And you realize this is far better than any ceiling fan. The interior of the yurt is arranged with a clear sense of order and purpose. The back of the yurt, opposite the door, is often considered the place of honor, reserved for elders or important guests. The right side might be for the women and their tools, while the left side is for the men and their equipment, like saddles and hunting gear. Everything has its place, designed for both convenience and respect. There are no cluttered drawers or overflowing closets here. Every item is essential and serves a purpose, reflecting a minimalist ethos born out of necessity. It's a beautifully organized existence, where chaos is simply not an option when you need to be ready to move at a moment's notice. One quirky or fringe tidbit about the yurt is the belief held by some nomadic cultures that the circular shape itself held spiritual significance, representing the cosmos or the endless cycle of life. The central pole, in some traditions, was seen as a connection between heaven and earth. While this isn't universally accepted across all nomadic groups, it speaks to a deeper connection between their practical dwellings and their spiritual worldview. Historians still argue whether these spiritual interpretations were always present or developed over time as a philosophical layer on top of a purely functional design. But as you lie within its protective embrace, feeling the gentle sway of the structure in the wind, it's easy to imagine a sense of profound connection to the world around you. The walls are often adorned with woven rugs, practical for insulation and comfort, but also adding a touch of color and pattern to the interior. You might notice intricate designs, geometric patterns, or stylized animal motifs, all crafted with incredible skill. These aren't just decorations. They're often part of the family's portable wealth, easily rolled up and transported with everything else. The soft glow of a simple oil lamp might cast dancing shadows on these walls as you drift off, making the cozy space feel even more intimate. The yurt is more than just a shelter. It's a living, breathing part of the nomadic identity, a quiet sanctuary in a boundless world. In this tranquil world of gentle migrations, one creature stands supreme, shaping every facet of your life: the horse. Horse culture reigns on the steppe, and it's not an exaggeration to say that without these magnificent animals, the nomadic way of life as we know it simply wouldn't exist. You learn to ride almost before you can walk, your legs naturally gripping the animal's flanks as if it were an extension of your own body. The horse is your transportation, your hunting partner, your war steed, and even, surprisingly, a source of sustenance. It's a bond deeper than any modern pet owner could comprehend. It's a partnership forged over millennia under the vast, indifferent sky. Imagine the feeling of galloping across the endless plains, the wind whipping through your hair, the rhythmic thud of hooves, a lullaby to your ears. This isn't just about speed, it's about freedom, about covering vast distances with an ease that would astonish settled peoples. The mobility provided by horses is a mainstream historical fact that allowed nomadic empires to rise and fall with astonishing speed, projecting power across continents. But for you, the everyday nomad, it's about reaching new pastures, outrunning a sudden storm, or simply enjoying the unparalleled sensation of unity with a powerful, intelligent creature. It's like having a high-performance sports car, an all-terrain vehicle, and your best friend, all wrapped up in one four-legged package. Nomadic horses, unlike their modern domesticated counterparts, were smaller, stockier, and incredibly hardy. They were bred for endurance and resilience, able to survive the harsh steppe winters and thrive on sparse grazing. You'd never see them pampered in stables. They lived alongside their human companions, sharing the same rough-and-tumble existence. This close proximity fostered an intimate understanding between horse and rider, a silent language of cues and responses that allowed for incredible feats of horsemanship. It's truly a quirky or fringe tidbit that some nomadic cultures could distinguish their own horses by scent or the subtle nuances of their neighs in a vast herd. You might even find yourself developing a favorite horse, one whose temperament perfectly matches your own, a silent confidant through the long days and nights. Beyond riding, the horse provided an astonishing array of resources. Mare's milk, as we briefly touched upon, was a staple, fermented into the mildly alcoholic and nutritious drink called kumi. The hides were used for leather goods, saddles, and even parts of the yurt. Horsehair was woven into ropes and textiles, and in times of scarcity, the horse could provide meat, though it was generally considered a last resort or a celebratory feast, not an everyday meal. Historians still argue whether the initial domestication of the horse was primarily for transport, milk, or meat, or if it was a combination of these needs that led to this transformative relationship. But regardless of the origin, the horse became the undisputed king of the steppe. Your days would involve constant interaction with these animals. You'd learn to care for them, to understand their subtle moods, and to communicate with them through gentle commands and even telepathic-like intuition that develops over years of shared life. You'd spend hours in the saddle, sometimes just observing the herd, sometimes guiding them to new grazing grounds. The rhythm of the horse's gait, the gentle sway, can be incredibly soothing, almost hypnotic. It's an active meditation, connecting you to the earth, the sky, and the very essence of nomadic life. Even their games and leisure activities revolved around horses. Horse racing was, and still is, a popular pastime, showcasing the speed and endurance of their mounts. Archery from horseback was not just a military skill, but a revered art form, requiring immense balance, precision, and coordination. Imagine the exhilarating challenge of hitting a small target while galloping at full speed. It's certainly more exciting than your average board game. This pervasive influence of the horse meant that every aspect of nomadic existence, from practical survival to cultural expression, was deeply intertwined with these noble creatures. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, you dismount, patting your horse's neck, and feel a profound sense of gratitude for this silent, powerful partner. After days spent in the saddle, riding across vast stretches of land, your body craves sustenance. And in the world of the steppe nomad, food and sustenance are not about elaborate banquets or complex recipes. They are about efficiency, nutrition, and what the land and your animals can provide. Imagine a diet that is remarkably simple, yet incredibly effective, designed to fuel a life of constant movement and exposure to the elements. You won't find delicate pastries or intricate casseroles here, but you will find food that sustains, warms, and satisfies. It's the ultimate farm-table experience, except your farm is constantly moving. The cornerstone of the nomadic diet is meat and dairy. This isn't just a preference. It's a mainstream historical fact driven by the environment. The steppe, while rich in grass, isn't conducive to large-scale agriculture in the way settled societies understood it. Instead, your animals provide everything: Milk, as we touched on, is processed into various forms. The ubiquitous fermented mare's milk, kumi, which is both hydrating and mildly alcoholic, acting as a gentle pick-me-up and a source of vitamins. Our Yule, dried cheese curds, which are portable, long-lasting, and can be softened in water to make a quick meal, and various forms of butter and cheese. You'd carry a pouch of Arowell with you on long journeys, a quiet, chewy reminder of home and sustenance. Meat is consumed in various ways. Fresh meat from sheep or goats is a delicacy, often prepared simply by boiling or roasting over an open fire. You might gather around, sharing the warmth of the flames and the rich aroma of cooking meat, a communal act that strengthens bonds. But in a nomadic lifestyle, preservation is key. Meat is dried into borts, thin strips that can last for months or even years. This dried meat is incredibly light and nutrient-dense, perfect for carrying on long journeys or for periods when hunting isn't fruitful. You might rehydrate it in hot water to make a simple, fortifying stew. It's a bit like ancient jerky, but without the fancy packaging and questionable ingredients. This ability to preserve meat without refrigeration is a quirky or fringe tidbit that allowed their armies to move so quickly and effectively, unburdened by lengthy supply lines. Imagine being able to carry a week's worth of calories in a small pouch, while meat and dairy form the bulk. Nomads also supplemented their diet with wild game and foraged plants. Small animals, like marmots or ground squirrels, might be trapped, and various wild onions, berries, or roots would be collected when available. These additions provided vital vitamins and minerals, adding a subtle variety to their otherwise protein-rich diet. This demonstrates a deep knowledge of their environment, an intimate understanding of what plants were edible and where to find them. Historians still argue whether the consumption of specific wild plants was for purely nutritional reasons, or if some also held medicinal or even ritualistic significance. Cooking methods were simple and efficient, reflecting their mobile lifestyle. The central hearth in the yurt was paramount, but outside, fire pits or portable metal stoves called tegu were used. One popular method, especially for larger gatherings or celebratory meals, involved cooking meat with hot stones inside a sealed pot or directly within the carcass of an animal, a technique known as korkhog. This slow, even cooking created incredibly tender and flavorful meat, often served with simple broths. It's a process that requires patience, a commodity nomads had in abundance as they waited for their food to gently transform. Even tea played a role, though not native to the steppe. Bricks of compressed tea leaves would arrive via trade, boiled with milk, salt, and sometimes butter to create a nourishing, warming beverage. It was more than just a drink. It was a caloric boost, a way to hydrate, and a comforting ritual that marked the beginning or end of the day. As you sip your salty milk tea, feeling its warmth spread through you, you reflect on the ingenuity of a people who turned basic resources into a complete and sustainable way of life. There's a quiet satisfaction in knowing exactly where your food comes from, and that it has traveled with you just as you have traveled with it. With your stomach gently satisfied and the warmth of the fire lingering, your thoughts might turn to the practicalities of dressing for life on the endless plains. Nomadic dress and adornment aren't about fashion trends or elaborate displays of wealth in the modern sense. They are about ingenious functionality, protection against the elements, and a subtle expression of identity. Imagine clothing crafted from natural materials, designed to be both incredibly warm in winter and surprisingly cool in summer, all while allowing for unrestricted movement on horseback. You wouldn't find yourself complaining about nothing to wear. Every item serves a vital purpose. The core of nomadic attire is the deal, a long, loose, robe-like garment with long sleeves, often belted at the waist. This versatile garment is a mainstream historical fact worn by both men and women across various nomadic cultures, adapted to local conditions and available materials. In winter, the deal would be lined with sheepskin, camel wool, or even the fur of wild animals, providing unparalleled insulation against the biting steppe winds and sub-zero temperatures. In summer, lighter cotton or silk versions would be worn, allowing for breathability. The length and loose fit are practical for riding, protecting the legs from chafing and the sun, and allowing for easy layering. It's the original all-weather coat, but with a much more elegant drape. Beneath the deal, you'd wear trousers, especially important for horseback riding, and soft leather boots. These boots, often with upturned toes, were designed for comfort in the stirrups and easy removal when entering a yurt. Footwear was robust, built to withstand constant wear and tear, and typically made from sturdy animal hides. Forget uncomfortable modern shoes. These were designed for maximum practicality and durability. Headwear was equally important, offering crucial protection from the sun, wind, and snow. Various types of hats, often felted wool or fur-lined, were common. They weren't just about warmth. A good hat could also provide shade during the blindingly bright summer days. It's a quirky or fringe tidbit that the specific style and ornamentation of a hat could sometimes indicate a person's tribal affiliation, marital status, or even their social standing. A subtle visual language understood by those who shared the steppe. You might notice a particular feather or a unique stitch pattern that subtly announces who someone is, far more quietly than a modern name tag. Historians still argue whether the elaborate headpieces seen in some historical depictions were for daily wear or primarily for ceremonial occasions. Adornment, while present, was typically practical or held symbolic meaning rather than being purely decorative. Belts, often leather and sometimes adorned with metal plaques, were essential for holding tools, weapons, and pouches. Women would wear braids, sometimes embellished with silver ornaments or beads, and jewelry crafted from silver, turquoise, or coral. These items weren't just pretty, they were portable wealth, easily transported during migrations and serving as a form of savings. Imagine wearing your bank account on your necklace. Even the materials themselves tell a story. Wool, sourced directly from their sheep, was processed into felt, a non-woven fabric that is incredibly warm, water-resistant, and durable. The skill involved in felting, a painstaking process of matting and pressing wool fibers, was passed down through generations. Leather from various animals was tanned and worked into clothing, footwear, and equipment. The reliance on natural, readily available resources meant their attire was perfectly suited to their environment, a testament to sustainable living centuries before the term was even coined. You would learn to mend and repair your own clothes, understanding the value of every stitch and every piece of material. There's a quiet satisfaction in wearing something you know was crafted with purpose, designed to protect you from the vast, indifferent world outside your cozy yurt. As you drift deeper into the tranquility of the steppe, you begin to appreciate the subtle yet profound structure of nomadic society. Tribal structures and bonds were the invisible threads that wove individuals into a cohesive, resilient fabric. Imagine a world where your extended family isn't just a holiday gathering, but your entire support system, your defense, and your identity. This isn't just about blood relations. It's about a network of alliances, traditions, and shared responsibilities that ensured survival in a challenging environment. It's a bit like a very large, mobile, and highly functional family reunion that never ends. At the heart of nomadic society was the family unit, often extending beyond the immediate parents and children to include grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, all living in close proximity, sometimes sharing a cluster of Europe. This tight-knit family structure is a mainstream historical fact, crucial for sharing labor, resources, and knowledge. Everyone had a role, from tending the animals to preparing food, from crafting tools to educating the young. It's a beautifully efficient system, driven by mutual dependence rather than rigid hierarchies. You would learn from your elders through observation and participation, absorbing the wisdom of generations in a way that modern schooling can only dream of. Beyond the immediate family, individuals belonged to clans, and clans, in turn, formed tribes. These larger groupings provided a framework for larger-scale migrations, defense against external threats, and the organization of important communal activities like large hunts or seasonal gatherings. While leaders existed, their authority was often based on charisma, wisdom, and proven ability rather than inherited power in the same way European monarchies operated. A respected elder or a skilled warrior might hold sway, guiding decisions through consensus rather than decree. It was a more fluid form of leadership, adapting to the needs of the moment. A quirky or fringe tidbit about these bonds is the practice of blood brotherhood, or sworn alliances between individuals from different clans or even tribes. These bonds could be as strong or even stronger than familial ties, creating intricate networks of loyalty and mutual support across the vast steppe. Imagine pledging your undying loyalty to someone, sealing it with a ritual, and knowing that your lives are now intertwined, a sort of ancient, high-stakes buddy system. Historians still argue whether these alliances were primarily pragmatic, driven by strategic military needs, or if they held a deeper, more spiritual significance in fostering intergroup cohesion. But for the nomad, these bonds were very real, providing safety and opportunity in an often unpredictable world. Disputes within these structures were typically handled through traditional customs and the mediation of elders, emphasizing reconciliation and maintaining harmony within the group. After all, when your entire community lives and moves together, internal conflict is a luxury you simply cannot afford. You learn the art of compromise and the wisdom of letting small slights fade away in the vastness of the steppe. The focus was always on collective survival and prosperity, fostering a sense of shared destiny. The vastness of the steppe meant that while tribes might encounter each other, there was often enough space to avoid constant conflict. When interactions did occur, they could be for trade, for marriage alliances, or sometimes, sadly, for raiding. But even raids often had their own unspoken rules, a dance of power rather than outright annihilation. The very mobility of nomadic life meant that if a situation became truly untenable, a group could simply move on, a peaceful form of protest against tyranny or overwhelming pressure. This option for voting with your feet provided a unique check on power dynamics within and between groups. As you close your eyes, you can almost hear the quiet hum of these ancient bonds, a reassuring presence in the endless expanse. The strength of the individual was undeniable, but the strength of the collective, held together by these intricate and deeply felt tribal structures, was what truly allowed the peaceful journey of the nomads across the Mongol steppe. As your journey continues, you realize that despite the vastness and the seemingly isolated nature of nomadic life, these communities were far from cut off from the rest of the world. In fact, they were intimately connected through intricate trade routes and exchanges. Imagine pathways worn smooth by countless hooves and feet, trails crisscrossing the steppe like silent rivers, carrying not just goods, but also ideas, innovations, and whispers of distant lands. This quiet flow of commerce was as vital to their survival and prosperity as their herds. It's a bit like an ancient slow-motion Amazon Prime, delivering everything from silk to spices. The nomadic economy, while primarily based on livestock and their byproducts, still required certain goods that the steppe couldn't provide. Metals for tools and weapons, grains for occasional supplements, and luxury items like silk or tea from the settled empires to the east and west were all highly sought after. This need for external resources created a vibrant, though often invisible, network of exchange. This engagement with wider trade networks is a mainstream historical fact that often gets overlooked in favor of the more dramatic tales of conquest. Yet, it was this peaceful commerce that often laid the groundwork for future interactions, both friendly and otherwise. You, as a nomad, might find yourself participating in these exchanges. Perhaps you're offering your finest hides, well-crafted felt, sturdy horses, or even the invaluable skill of guiding caravans across treacherous terrain. In return, you might acquire beautifully woven silks from China, aromatic spices from India, or intricate metalwork from Persia. These goods weren't just commodities, they were windows into other worlds, sparking curiosity and providing a subtle taste of distant civilizations. It's like discovering a foreign snack in a remote village, a small, delightful surprise. A quirky or fringe tidbit in these exchanges was the use of livestock as currency. While precious metals certainly had their place for many day-to-day transactions and larger deals, animals themselves were the most valued form of payment. A particularly fine horse might buy a significant quantity of silk, or a herd of sheep could be exchanged for grain. Imagine trying to pay for your groceries with a goat at the supermarket today. It certainly adds a unique dimension to cash or credit. Historians still argue whether this animal-based economy was a practical necessity due to the mobile lifestyle, or if it reflected a deeper cultural valuation of living wealth over inert materials. The nomadic groups weren't just passive recipients of goods. They were active participants and, at times, even controllers of these routes. They provided security for caravans, exacted tolls, and sometimes even facilitated the movement of merchants across vast and dangerous territories. The very mobility that defined their lifestyle also made them ideal intermediaries, connecting diverse regions and cultures. It's a delicate balance, sometimes leading to peaceful coexistence and mutual benefit, and other times to conflict over control of these lucrative arteries of commerce. As you consider the flow of goods, you also consider the flow of ideas. Alongside the silks and spices, knowledge traveled about new technologies, different philosophies, and diverse artistic styles. a pattern on a piece of pottery, a unique method of tanning leather, or a new way of counting the stars could all be quietly exchanged, enriching the nomadic way of life in subtle but significant ways. These trade routes were ancient information superhighways, albeit much, much slower. The whispers of distant markets, the clinking of foreign coins, and the rustle of exotic fabrics would have been subtle yet persistent sounds on the quiet steppe, reminding you that even in your vast solitude, you were part of a much larger, interconnected world. As twilight paints the vast steppe in hues of lavender and deep indigo, a different kind of connection comes into focus: the spirits of the steppe. For the nomads, the world was alive, imbued with unseen forces and ancient powers. This wasn't a formal religion with grand temples and rigid doctrines. It was a deeply personal, animistic worldview woven into the very fabric of daily life. Imagine feeling the presence of spirits in the whispering wind, in the rustle of the tall grass, and in the distant rumble of thunder. It's a gentle awareness that everything possesses a soul, demanding respect and fostering a sense of humble awe. The sky itself was often revered as Tengri, the eternal blue sky, a benevolent, overarching deity who watched over the world. Below Tengri, a myriad of spirits inhabited the natural world: mountain spirits, water spirits, forest spirits, and especially the spirits of the ancestors. These beliefs provided a spiritual framework for their existence, explaining the unexplainable and offering guidance in a sometimes harsh world. This reverence for nature and the elements is a mainstream historical fact prevalent across many ancient nomadic cultures. It's a beautifully simple theology that connects humanity directly to the earth and sky without needing an intermediary. You might participate in simple rituals to honor these spirits. Perhaps you'd offer a small libation of kamea to the earth before a journey, or tie a colorful silk ribbon to a sacred tree to ask for good fortune. These acts weren't about appeasing vengeful gods, but about maintaining balance and showing gratitude for the blessings of nature. It's a bit like giving a polite nod to your surroundings before settling in, acknowledging the unseen forces that make life possible. A quirky or fringe tidbit in their spiritual practices was the role of shamans. These individuals, often men or women, were believed to be able to communicate directly with the spirit world, mediating between humans and the unseen. They might perform healing rituals, offer guidance, or interpret omens through trance-like states, drumming, and chanting. These weren't theatrical performances for entertainment. They were serious endeavors undertaken with deep reverence. Imagine seeking counsel from someone who claims to chat with the spirits of the mountain. It certainly beats a psychic hotline. Historians still argue whether the power of shamans derived from genuine spiritual connection, profound psychological insight, or a mastery of medicinal herbs and natural phenomena. For the nomad, every aspect of life could hold spiritual significance. The central smoke hole of the yurt, as we discussed, wasn't just for ventilation. It was a cosmic opening, a connection to the heavens. The animals themselves were seen as gifts from Tengri, and their spirits were respected even after they provided sustenance. There was a strong sense of taboos as well, unspoken rules that governed behavior to avoid offending spirits or bringing bad luck. Perhaps you wouldn't whistle inside a yurt for fear of attracting ill winds, or you'd be careful not to waste food, knowing the spirits of the hunt might disapprove. These beliefs fostered a deep sense of respect for the environment and for the interconnectedness of all things. You wouldn't pollute a water source, for example, knowing it was the dwelling place of spirits and vital for your own survival and that of your animals. It instilled a sense of responsibility, a quiet understanding that you were but a small part of a much grander living system. As you lie in your yurt, feeling the gentle pulse of the steppe around you, you understand that the peace of the nomadic journey is deeply intertwined with a profound and humble reverence for the invisible world. As the last embers of the fire gently fade, casting long, dancing shadows within the yurt, another integral part of nomadic life would often begin to emerge: music and storytelling. These weren't mere forms of entertainment. They were the very threads that wove history, identity, and shared experience into the fabric of daily existence. Imagine the quiet nights on the steppe, with no artificial lights or digital screens to distract. In this profound darkness, human voices, the strumming of a simple instrument, and the power of narrative would fill the air, soothing souls and lulling the weary to sleep. It's the original podcast, but with more atmosphere and less advertising. The silence of the steppe made every sound amplified, and thus music held a special place. Instruments were typically portable and crafted from natural materials. The Morin kor, or horsehead fiddle, is a mainstream historical fact instrument iconic to Mongolian culture. Its two strings, often said to evoke the sound of a horse's whinny or the wind sweeping across the plains. Its deep, resonant tones are incredibly calming, almost hypnotic, perfect for quiet evenings. You might hear its mournful, beautiful melodies drifting from a nearby yurt, a gentle lullaby carried on the breeze. Songs would tell tales of epic heroes, of successful hunts, of lost loves, or simply celebrate the beauty of the steppe and the beloved horses. The lyrics might be repetitive, almost chant-like, designed to be easily remembered and to induce a meditative state. It's a bit like listening to a gentle, acoustic playlist designed specifically for relaxation. Historians still argue whether some of the earliest nomadic songs were purely for cultural expression, or if they also served mnemonic purposes, helping to remember vast amounts of ancestral knowledge and geographical data. Storytelling, however, was perhaps even more vital. Around the flickering light of the hearth, elders would recount the myths of creation, the brave deeds of ancestors, or the humorous escapades of trickster figures. These weren't just bedtime stories. They were living histories, moral lessons, and maps of their spiritual and geographical world. You would listen, nestled amongst your family, the rhythmic cadence of the narrator's voice slowly drawing you into a world of shared imagination. The vivid imagery, combined with the gentle drone, would be a natural invitation to sleep. A quirky or fringe tidbit associated with nomadic storytelling is the practice of throat singing, or kumi. This unique vocal technique allows a single singer to produce two or more distinct notes simultaneously, creating an ethereal, almost otherworldly sound. It's truly astonishing, sounding like a chorus emanating from one person. Imagine hearing this deep, resonating hum accompanied by a higher, whistling overtone, conjuring images of wind howling through mountains, or the subtle sounds of distant herds. It's an art form that requires incredible control and concentration, and it's certainly more impressive than your average karaoke performance. These nightly sessions fostered a strong sense of community and reinforced cultural identity. In a world without written records for many centuries, Oral tradition was the primary means of passing down knowledge from one generation to the next. Every story, every song, was a link in a continuous chain connecting them to their past and guiding their future. You'd learn about the constellations through ancient tales, about the habits of wild animals through humorous anecdotes, and about moral conduct through the triumphs and failures of legendary figures. The humor, when present, was often subtle and observational, a gentle poke at human foibles or the unpredictable nature of life on the steppe. It wasn't about loud guffaws, but soft chuckles, shared moments of lightheartedness that eased the burdens of daily life. As the final notes of a lullaby fade and the storyteller's voice softens to a whisper, you feel the day's activities slowly give way to a profound sense of peace. The quiet murmur of voices, the soft melodies, and the imaginative worlds conjured by words are your guides into the realm of dreams, making the nomadic night an unexpectedly harmonious experience. As the gentle hum of last night's melodies still echoes faintly in your mind, your attention turns to the youngest members of this mobile community, the children of the wind. On the steppe, childhood isn't a separate, sheltered phase, but an active, integrated part of the nomadic journey. Imagine children who learn resilience from the vastness of their surroundings, resourcefulness from necessity, and freedom from the endless horizons. They are, in essence, tiny, incredibly capable nomads in training, learning life's lessons not in classrooms, but directly from the living, breathing world around them. It's truly the ultimate outdoor education program. From a very young age, nomadic children were taught the skills essential for survival and contribution to the family unit. This hands-on, experiential learning is a mainstream historical fact across nomadic societies. Toddlers might play with miniature bows and arrows, mimicking their fathers, or help their mothers collect argel. There's no concept of child labor in the modern sense. It's simply a natural apprenticeship into the rhythm of nomadic life, where every pair of hands, no matter how small, has value. You'd see a young child, perhaps no older than 5, confidently leading a small herd of goats, their seriousness reflecting the weight of their responsibility. One of the most remarkable aspects of their upbringing was their early mastery of horsemanship. It's a quirky or fringe tidbit that many nomadic children learned to ride almost as soon as they could walk, sometimes even earlier, being secured to a saddle on a calm horse. Imagine being placed on a horse's back before you've even mastered tying your shoes. The horse became an extension of their bodies, instilling a profound sense of balance, confidence, and connection to these magnificent animals. You'd see them galloping across the plains with uninhibited joy, their laughter carried on the wind, a stark contrast to the structured play of children in settled communities. Historians still argue whether this early horsemanship fostered a unique cognitive development, perhaps enhancing spatial reasoning or motor skills in ways different from sedentary childhoods. Playtime on the steppe was often intertwined with practical skills. Games might involve mock hunts, races on horseback, or competitions in archery, all subtly honing the abilities they would need as adults. There were no elaborate toys, but the natural world provided endless opportunities for imaginative play. A stick could be a sword, a rock, a precious gem, and the entire steppe an arena for their adventures. This self-directed, open-ended play fostered creativity and problem-solving skills in a way that structured lessons rarely can. Discipline was often gentle, relying more on communal expectation and the natural consequences of actions than harsh punishment. A child who strayed too far might experience the discomfort of being lost, learning caution directly from the vastness of the steppe. Elders would guide and advise, sharing wisdom through stories and quiet observation rather than constant lecturing. There was a deep respect for children as future contributors to the family and tribe, and their independence was fostered from an early age. Despite the inherent challenges of nomadic life, there was also a pervasive sense of freedom and wonder in a steppe childhood. The sky was their ceiling, the grass their carpet, and the animals their companions. They learned the names of the stars, the calls of the wild birds, and the secrets of the ancient pathways. They grew up with an intimate knowledge of nature, a practical resilience, and an unwavering sense of belonging to their mobile community. As you close your eyes, you can almost see the tiny figures silhouetted against a setting sun, riding their ponies across the endless horizon, true children of the wind, born to wander and thrive. Having explored the upbringing of the steppe's youngest, let's now turn our attention to the tangible objects that filled their lives. Not trinkets or baubles, but items born of necessity and crafted with purpose. Craftsmanship and utility were not separate concepts for the nomad. They were intertwined, each object a testament to ingenuity and skill. Imagine every item in your possession serving a direct, undeniable function, yet often imbued with a quiet beauty born of its material and the hands that shaped it. It's a minimalist's dream where every piece is cherished and essential. Think first of the ubiquitous felt. We've touched on it as the yurt's skin and clothing's warmth, but its uses extended far beyond. From the wool of their sheep, nomads created remarkably versatile felt, which is a mainstream historical fact as a primary material. It was used for rugs and floor coverings within the yurt, providing insulation and comfort. It became saddle pads, protecting both horse and rider. It was even fashioned into sturdy bags and containers, lightweight and surprisingly durable for transporting goods. The process of making felt was laborious but communal, often involving the entire family. Imagine a group rhythmically rolling and pressing wet wool, working together to transform raw fiber into a dense, protective fabric. This shared effort would create a sense of accomplishment and deepen family bonds. Leather, too, was indispensable. From the hides of their animals, nomads produced tough, flexible leather, used for everything from boots and belts to harnesses and horse tack. Tools for working leather were simple yet effective: bone awls, stone scrapers, and natural dyes. The strength and durability of these leather goods were paramount, designed to withstand the rigors of constant use and exposure to the elements. A well-made saddle, for instance, wasn't just a seat. It was an ergonomic marvel, built for comfort over thousands of miles. This focus on durability meant that items were meant to last for years, carefully repaired rather than easily discarded. It's the ultimate example of buy it for life, centuries before the internet existed to promote such a philosophy. A quirky or fringe tidbit about nomadic craftsmanship is the intricate bone and antler work. While metals might be sourced through trade, bone and antler were readily available from hunted animals or those that had died naturally. These materials were carved and polished into surprisingly delicate and functional items: needles, combs, arrowheads, and even intricate decorative pieces for their belts or horse bridles. Imagine the patience and precision required to carve a tiny, functional button from a piece of bone, showcasing a quiet artistry hidden within their practicality. Historians still argue whether the elaborate decoration on some of these bone/artifacts had a purely aesthetic purpose, or if they carried deeper, symbolic, or even magical meanings. Even cooking utensils were designed for mobility. Simple metal pots and kettles, often acquired through trade, were complemented by wooden bowls and ladles. Again, the emphasis was on lightweight, unbreakable, and multi-purpose items. You wouldn't find a vast array of specialized kitchen gadgets here. One pot might serve to boil meat, brew tea, and even wash a few small items. It's a lesson in making do with what you have and appreciating its utility. The beauty in nomadic crafts often lay in their form, following function, but also in the subtle patterns and natural dyes used. Geometric motifs, stylized animal figures, and earthy colors were common, often reflecting their connection to nature and their spiritual beliefs. These weren't mass-produced items. Each piece bore the unique touch of the artisan, a silent story of skill and dedication. As you trace the patterns on a felt rug or admire the worn leather of a saddle, you can almost feel the quiet satisfaction of the hands that made them, knowing that every stitch, every carve, every polish was made for a life lived simply on the move and in harmony with the materials available. As you continue to journey through the quiet existence of the steppe nomads, you become acutely aware of the grand conductor of their lives. The seasons, seasonal migrations, weren't random wanderings, but a carefully choreographed dance with nature, a profound understanding of the land's rhythms and the needs of their precious herds. Imagine a life where your calendar isn't based on arbitrary dates, but on the subtle shifts in temperature, the changing colors of the grass, and the annual cycle of birth and renewal for your animals. It's the original slow travel, dictated by the pace of nature itself. The year on the steppe can be broadly divided into 4 distinct periods, each dictating a specific movement and set of tasks. Spring, or kaver, would be a time of gentle awakening. The snows would begin to melt, nourishing the dry grasses and bringing forth new, tender shoots. This fresh pasture was vital for the animals, especially for ewes and mares, giving birth to their young. Your yurt would be carefully dismantled, loaded onto camels or carts, and your family would begin a gentle migration towards these newly green pastures, often to higher ground or specific river valleys. This pursuit of fresh grazing is a mainstream historical fact and the primary driver of nomadic movement across the steppe. You'd feel the anticipation in the air, a quiet excitement for the promise of abundance after the long, lean winter. Summer, or Zuin, was a period of relative plenty and stability. The grass would be at its richest, and the animals would fatten up, building reserves for the leaner months ahead. This was a time for processing dairy products, shearing sheep for wool, and perhaps larger communal gatherings where families and clans would reunite, sharing news and celebrating. While movement still occurred, it might be shorter, more localized shifts to avoid overgrazing. You'd cherish the long, warm days, perhaps even feeling the gentle pull of a summer thunderstorm in the distance. A dramatic and beautiful display across the open sky. Historians still argue whether the sense of community was strongest during these summer encampments, or if the shared hardship of winter forged even deeper bonds. Then came autumn, or Namar, the most crucial period. As the temperatures began to drop and the days shortened, the focus shifted entirely to preparation for winter. This involved ensuring the animals were sufficiently fattened, meat was dried into borts, and felt for the yurts was repaired and thickened. The migrations in autumn were strategic, moving towards more sheltered valleys, riverbanks, or south-facing slopes that offered some protection from the harsh winter winds and provided access to water and whatever forage could be found under the snow. It's like a quiet, methodical packing up of your entire life, making sure every detail is accounted for before the big chill sets in. Winter, or Aval, was the ultimate test of nomadic resilience. This was a time of hunkering down, of patience and conservation. Movement would be minimal, often confined to small shifts within a sheltered area to find patches of snow-free grass. The animals would rely on their fat reserves, and human survival depended on the food stored and the warmth of the heavily insulated yurt. You'd spend more time inside, repairing tools, telling stories, and simply enduring. The silence of the snow-covered steppe could be profound, broken only by the howl of the wind or the distant, muffled bleating of a sheep. This cyclical journey, driven by the needs of their herds and the dictates of nature, created a remarkably sustainable way of life. It's a quirky or fringe tidbit that some nomadic groups developed specific systems for predicting winter severity based on animal behavior or subtle changes in plant growth. You'd probably scoff at a modern meteorologist and trust the wisdom of your oldest camel instead. This continuous flow, this acceptance of movement as the core of existence, fostered a unique kind of peace. There was no permanence to cling to, no possessions to weigh you down beyond what was essential. You learned to live in the moment, adapting to whatever the steppe threw at you, finding beauty and sustenance in its relentless, ancient rhythms. As you pull your felt blanket higher, the imagery of snow gently falling outside your yurt, you understand that the peaceful journey of the nomad is not just a physical act, but a deeply spiritual one, in harmony with the vast, breathing landscape. Having seen the careful dance of seasonal migrations, let's now consider how these seemingly isolated nomadic communities intersected with the bustling arteries of ancient commerce. The Silk Road's whisper wasn't a roar for the nomads, but a subtle, persistent hum of distant markets and exotic goods. Imagine a vast network of trails stretching across continents, connecting the east and west, and right through the heart of this network flowed the nomadic peoples, sometimes as facilitators, sometimes as overseers, and always, in some way, influenced by its currents. It's like being a quiet, rural town that suddenly finds itself on the main highway between two major cities. The Silk Road, a collective term for a series of ancient trade routes, is a mainstream historical fact, famous for facilitating the exchange of silk, spices, technologies, and ideas between China, India, the Middle East, and Europe. While often envisioned with grand caravans of camels laden with treasures, the reality for many nomadic groups was a more nuanced interaction. They weren't just marauders lurking at the edges. They were often integral to the road's functioning. Their intimate knowledge of the vast, often treacherous terrain, their unmatched horsemanship, and their ability to navigate the complex tribal landscape made them invaluable. You might find yourself guiding a nervous merchant caravan through a mountain pass, or perhaps negotiating a fair price for safe passage through your territory. For the nomads, the Silk Road was a source of goods they couldn't produce themselves: metal tools, agricultural products, finished textiles, and exotic items that added comfort or prestige to their lives. In return, they offered horses, furs, hides, and perhaps most importantly, security along certain stretches of the route. It was a symbiotic relationship, sometimes tense, but often mutually beneficial. This gentle exchange of necessities and luxuries brought a subtle richness to their otherwise stark existence, allowing a touch of the outside world to filter into their mobile homes. A quirky or fringe tidbit is how the very structure of nomadic society, with its mobile, self-sufficient units, sometimes made them ideal mini-traders along localized segments of the Silk Road. Instead of large, state-sponsored caravans, smaller family units or clans might engage in short-distance trade, moving goods from one nomadic encampment to another, or from steppe to oasis towns. Imagine a mobile market where your family's yurt is not just your home, but also your storefront, offering expertly crafted leather goods or robust horses in exchange for a few bolts of patterned cloth. Historians still argue whether these localized informal trade networks were as significant as the grand imperial caravans in the overall flow of Silk Road commerce. The influence wasn't just material. Ideas, religions, and artistic styles also traveled along these routes, subtly reshaping nomadic culture. Buddhism, Nestorian Christianity, and later Islam all made their way across the steppe, often carried by merchants and adopted by various nomadic groups. You might encounter a trader who speaks a different language and carries a strange, beautiful idol, sparking quiet conversations and perhaps even debates around the evening fire. This exposure to diverse worldviews, even if fragmented, contributed to a surprising intellectual openness among some nomadic peoples. Yet, despite these interactions, the nomads largely retained their distinct identity. The whisper of the Silk Road didn't drown out the gentle rustle of the steppe grass or the comforting bleat of their sheep. It simply added another layer to their peaceful journey, a reminder that even in the most remote corners of the world, human connections stretch far and wide, woven by the quiet threads of trade and curiosity. As you close your eyes, you can almost hear the soft chime of camel bells fading into the endless distance. While our journey emphasizes the peaceful aspects of nomadic life, it would be incomplete without acknowledging the occasional shifts to a different, more assertive rhythm. Let's gently approach the topic of early steppe warfare. Imagine a world where disputes weren't settled in courtrooms, but on the open plains, where conflicts, when they arose, were often swift and focused on vital resources like grazing lands or herds. This wasn't about conquest for its own sake in the earliest periods, but often about survival, honor, and the pragmatic resolution of grievances. It's a bit like a particularly intense game of musical chairs, but with horses and pointy sticks. The primary reason for conflict among early nomadic groups was often resource competition. When pastures were scarce or water sources dried up, tribes might come into conflict over access to the best grazing lands. Raiding, too, was a common practice, aimed at acquiring horses, livestock. This was often seen less as outright war and more as a high-stakes form of resource redistribution, a mainstream historical fact driven by the environmental constraints of the steppe. You might participate in a raid not with bloodlust, but with a clear objective: to secure enough animals to ensure your family's survival through the coming winter. Nomadic warfare was defined by its mobility and the unparalleled skill of its warriors on horseback. The composite bow, a powerful weapon, crafted from layers of wood, bone, and sinew, was their signature tool. Mounted archers could loose volleys of arrows while galloping at full speed, circling their opponents and retreating just as quickly. This hit-and-run tactic, combined with their incredible endurance, made them formidable opponents for slower, infantry-based armies. It's a fluid, dynamic form of combat, more like a dance than a rigid confrontation, albeit a very dangerous dance. Before larger engagements, sometimes a champion from each side would meet in single combat, with the outcome potentially determining the victor of the entire skirmish, or at least setting the tone. This reduced the overall bloodshed and allowed for a more honorable resolution to disputes. Imagine sending out your best archer to settle a dispute over grazing rights instead of mobilizing your entire tribe. It's certainly more efficient, serving to boost morale or test the resolve of the opposing side. Their tactics were often pragmatic, aimed at achieving specific objectives with minimal loss of life on their own side. Large, decisive battles, as known in settled empires, were less common in early nomadic warfare. Instead, it was a series of skirmishes, feints, and strategic retreats. They preferred to outmaneuver and harass, wearing down their enemies rather than engaging in prolonged, costly sieges. After all, if you're a nomad, sitting still to besiege a fortress is a profound inconvenience, a truly boring way to spend a week. When conflicts did erupt, they were often brutal but generally swift. The goal was usually to break the enemy's will to fight, seize resources, and then disperse, returning to the rhythm of pastoral life. There was no concept of occupying territory in the same way a settled empire might. Their power lay in their mobility and their ability to appear and disappear across the vast plains. As you reflect on these moments of conflict, you understand that even the quietest journeys sometimes require a firm stance, a demonstration of strength to ensure the peaceful continuation of their way of life. The sound of hooves thundering across the plains, while not a lullaby, was a sometimes necessary part of the steppe's ancient soundtrack. From the quiet skirmishes over grazing rights, our narrative now expands, gently shifting focus to the figures who, surprisingly, brought immense, if often temporary, peace and order to the vast, fragmented steppe. The rise of great khans. Imagine a scattered collection of independent, often feuding tribes, suddenly drawn together under the banner of a single, charismatic leader. These were the individuals who, through sheer force of will, military genius, and a knack for organization, managed to unify the disparate nomadic groups, transforming localized skirmishes into an astonishing, if sometimes terrifying force. It's like herding cats, but the cats are also warriors, and you need to get them to conquer a continent. Long before the famous khans, many tried to grab power, but it didn't always go well. The steppe was a wild place where loyalty could change in a heartbeat. However, the concept of a strong leader, a khan, who could command respect and inspire unity, was a recurring theme. These early khans were often skilled warriors, but more importantly, they were astute politicians, capable of forging alliances, mediating disputes, and promising security and prosperity. Their rise was often slow, a gradual accumulation of prestige and followers, not an overnight sensation. This long tradition of emerging leaders, long before the famous names, is a mainstream historical fact, vital to understanding how the later empires could form so rapidly. The path to becoming a great Khan was rarely paved with ease. It involved navigating treacherous tribal politics, proving oneself in battle, and demonstrating an almost supernatural ability to inspire loyalty. When a Khan gained ascendancy, it was often because they offered something that warring tribes desperately needed: an end to constant internal strife and the promise of collective strength for external gains. It was a trade-off, perhaps, of individual nomadic freedom for collective power and stability. You would feel the shift in the air as a new leader emerged, a sense of quiet anticipation for what their reign might bring, hopefully more grazing land and fewer arrows flying past your yurt. A quirky or fringe tidbit associated with the rise of some early Khans was the practice of a Kurultai, a great assembly or council. This was a gathering of tribal chiefs and nobles who would formally confirm the selection of a new Khan. While often portrayed as democratic, it was usually a rubber stamp for a leader who had already amassed significant power. However, the existence of such a council suggests a tradition, however fleeting, of seeking consensus or at least gaining ceremonial approval. Imagine all the most powerful people from across the steppe coming together to hold a vote, probably with a lot of shouting and even more kumi. Historians still argue whether the Kurultai genuinely held power to depose a Khan, or if it was primarily a ritualistic legitimation of existing power structures. These Khans introduced a degree of order that was unprecedented on the steppe. They established laws, however rudimentary, to govern relations between tribes, often focusing on property rights and punishments for theft or violence. They organized their fighting forces into more cohesive units, moving beyond ad hoc raiding parties to disciplined armies. This organizational genius, coupled with their mobile lifestyle, would eventually allow them to project power far beyond the steppe itself. For the ordinary nomad, the rise of a strong Khan could mean a period of relative peace and stability. Raids from rival tribes might cease, trade routes could become safer, and opportunities for collective wealth might increase. It meant that you could graze your herds with a little more confidence, knowing that a powerful hand was attempting to maintain order. The quiet whisper of the wind might now carry echoes of decrees from a distant Khan, gradually unifying the vast, fragmented expanse into something greater. As you lie down to sleep, you recognize that even the powerful tides of history are sometimes guided by the will of a few, transforming the gentle, peaceful journey of individual nomads into the grand, unified movement of an empire. From the rise of those initial unifying figures, our story now drifts towards the most famous name to emerge from the steppe, a figure whose legacy is often misunderstood and certainly not always associated with peace. Genghis Khan's legacy. Imagine a man who, from humble beginnings, unified the disparate Mongol tribes and forged an empire so vast it would profoundly reshape the world, yet whose enduring impact went far beyond mere conquest. Tonight, we gently unravel the unexpected elements of his legacy that brought a new, albeit sometimes brutal, kind of order to the peaceful journey of the nomads. It's like discovering that the stern headmaster of your school also secretly loves knitting and ensures everyone gets enough nap time. Before his rise, the Mongol steppe was a patchwork of warring clans and tribes, locked in a cycle of revenge and raiding. Genghis Khan, born Temujin, spent his early life enduring hardship and betrayal. experiences that forged his formidable will and strategic genius. His true brilliance lay not just in military prowess, which was considerable, but in his ability to transcend traditional tribal loyalties and unite people under a single meritocratic banner. This unification, creating a single Mongol nation from a multitude of squabbling groups, is a mainstream historical fact that laid the groundwork for everything that followed. You would have witnessed this transformation firsthand, feeling the shift from chaotic uncertainty to a new, powerful cohesion. Genghis Khan introduced a comprehensive legal code, the Yasa, which governed both military and civilian life. This code, though strict, aimed to ensure justice, uphold loyalty, and prevent internal strife. It contained provisions for religious tolerance, protection of envoys, and even regulations on hunting seasons. While often enforced with brutal efficiency, its primary goal was to create a stable society, making it safe for trade and communication. It's a bit like creating the world's largest, most efficient, and slightly terrifying postal service, with very clear rules about not messing with the mailman. A quirky or fringe tidbit about Genghis Khan's personal impact was his deep respect for loyal retainers and his emphasis on merit over aristocratic birth. He famously promoted individuals based on their skills and loyalty. This revolutionary concept allowed for social mobility, previously unheard of on the steppe, empowering skilled individuals regardless of their background. And suddenly finding yourself promoted above seasoned chieftains, it certainly shakes things up. Historians still argue whether this meritocratic system was born purely out of pragmatic military necessity, or if it reflected a deeper philosophical rejection of entrenched class structures. The empire he built, even with its initial aggressive expansion, eventually fostered an environment where trade and cultural exchange flourished. By consolidating control over vast territories, he secured the Silk Road routes, making them safer than they had been in centuries. This Pax Mongolica, which we'll discuss more, was an unintended but significant consequence of his conquests. For the ordinary nomad, it meant that the subtle whispers of foreign goods and ideas could now travel more freely and securely, enriching their lives in quiet ways. His legacy also includes the organization of the Mongol army into highly disciplined units, an innovation that allowed for unprecedented speed and coordination. While this led to conquest, it also instilled a sense of purpose and collective identity among the nomadic warriors. They were no longer just raiders, but part of a grand, unified force. As you consider the vast plains, once home to endless tribal skirmishes, now under the singular rule of this legendary figure, you recognize that even the most powerful winds of change can paradoxically bring a new kind of calm to the wild. The echoes of his leadership, though sometimes fierce, allowed for a deeper, more profound peace to settle over the unified steppe. Building upon the formidable unity forged by Genghis Khan, our journey now quietly explores one of the most remarkable and often paradoxical periods in world history. The Pax Mongolica, unlikely peace. Imagine a vast empire stretching from Eastern Europe to the Pacific Ocean, where for nearly a century trade flourished, ideas crisscrossed continents, and people could travel with a surprising degree of safety. This wasn't a peace born of gentle diplomacy alone, but one imposed by a powerful, centralized authority that, despite its origins in conquest, inadvertently created an era of unprecedented calm across vast stretches of the globe. It's like finding tranquility in the eye of a very large, historically significant storm. This era, roughly from the mid-13th to mid-14th century, is a mainstream historical fact recognized for its role in facilitating extensive trade, communication, and cultural exchange across Eurasia. For you, the ordinary nomad, it meant that the trails you rode were now safer, the markets you visited more plentiful, and the whispers of the outside world, carried by merchants and travelers, became louder and more frequent. The Mongol overlords actively promoted trade, understanding that a thriving economy brought wealth and stability to their empire. They lowered taxes on merchants, provided protection to caravans, and established a standardized system of weights and measures. This created an environment where long-distance travel and commerce, once fraught with peril, became considerably less risky. You might see caravans larger and more diverse than ever before, carrying silks from China, spices from India, precious metals from Europe, and even new scientific instruments and artistic styles. It was truly a globalized world, centuries before the term existed, all thanks to the unifying, if sometimes heavy, hand of the Mongols. A quirky or fringe tidbit during this period was the flourishing of intellectual exchange. Scholars, artists, and religious figures from various traditions, Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, Taoism, were encouraged to travel and interact within the empire. This created a melting pot of ideas, leading to significant advancements in cartography, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Imagine sitting by your yurt fire, and a learned visitor from Persia is explaining the intricacies of an astrolabe, or a Chinese Buddhist monk is sharing a new meditation technique. Historians still argue whether this intellectual cross-pollination was a deliberate policy of the Mongol Khans to enrich their empire, or simply an accidental byproduct of their vast, interconnected dominion. The sheer efficiency of the Mongol administration, a legacy of Genghis Khan's reforms, contributed greatly to this peace. Laws were enforced consistently, and a sophisticated system of communication allowed messages to travel with unprecedented speed across the empire. This reduced internal conflicts and created a more predictable environment for everyone, from merchants to local farmers, even for the nomads who valued their freedom. This centralized order brought a kind of quiet liberation from the constant threat of intertribal warfare that had plagued the steppe for centuries. While not entirely without conflict, empires, even peaceful ones, have their internal struggles. The Pax Mongolica stands as a remarkable testament to how a unifying power, even one born of military might, could inadvertently create a golden age of connection and exchange. You would have experienced this peace not as an abstract concept, but in the tangible safety of your journeys, the wider array of goods available in trade, and the fascinating stories brought by travelers from distant lands. As you close your eyes, picture the vast ancient world, stitched together by silent trade routes, humming with a quiet, unlikely peace, all under the distant gaze of the Mongol sky. From the tranquil hum of the Pax Mongolica, our journey now focuses on one of the most astonishing logistical feats of the Mongol Empire, a system that truly tied their vast dominion together. The postal system of dreams. Imagine a network of relay stations stretching across thousands of miles, where fresh horses and riders stood ready at all hours, ensuring that messages and envoys could travel at breathtaking speed from one end of the empire to the other. This wasn't just about delivering letters. It was the nervous system of an empire, enabling rapid communication, intelligence gathering, and efficient governance. It's like an ancient, organic version of the internet, but powered by incredibly fast horses and even faster riders. This sophisticated postal system, known as the Yam, is a mainstream historical fact, widely documented by amazed travelers from Europe and Asia who witnessed its efficiency firsthand. It consisted of a series of well-spaced stations, typically 20 to 30 miles apart, where riders could rest, get fresh horses, and find provisions. Imperial decrees, military orders, and vital intelligence could be dispatched and received with astonishing speed, allowing the Mongol Khans to maintain control over their enormous territories and react swiftly to any challenges. You might, as a nomad, see one of these riders flash by, a blur of dust and determination, a silent testament to the empire's efficiency. The Yam wasn't just for official communication. It also served as a vital artery for travelers, merchants, and envoys, providing relatively safe and rapid passage across the empire. While not open to just anyone, those with official permits, known as Pesa, could utilize the stations, ensuring their journey was as smooth as possible. This facilitated the movement of goods and ideas, further contributing to the Pax Mongolica. It's a bit like having a private, super-fast highway with all the rest stops you could ever need, but you need a special VIP pass. A quirky or fringe tidbit about the Yam was the dedication, almost fanatical, of its riders. These Yamchis were expected to ride at breakneck speeds, day and night, in all weather conditions, pushing themselves and their horses to the limit. They sometimes wore bells to alert the next station of their impending arrival, allowing for swift preparation of fresh mounts. Imagine the sheer physical and mental endurance required, galloping across the featureless steppe for hours on end, carrying the fate of an empire in your pouch. Historians still argue whether the Yamchis were primarily volunteers driven by loyalty and prestige, or if their service was largely a conscription, albeit a highly respected one. The efficiency of the Yam was a marvel of its time, far surpassing any contemporary communication system in Europe. It allowed for a centralized administration of an empire that dwarfed any previously known. Without it, the vast Mongol dominion would likely have fractured much sooner. It was a key technological and organizational innovation, perhaps more impactful in its own way than many of the military innovations. Even for the ordinary nomad, this system brought a subtle sense of connection to the wider empire, knowing that news from far-off lands could arrive within days, carried by the tireless Yamchis. As you drift off to sleep, imagine the silent, tireless network beneath you, the thud of invisible hooves echoing across the vast expanse. Messages, both grand and mundane, are being carried at incredible speeds, connecting distant peoples and lands. The Mongol postal system was truly a dream of efficiency, ensuring that even in the vastness of the steppe, the empire remained deeply, intricately connected, allowing the peaceful journey of information to flow as freely as the wind. Beyond the swift efficiency of the Yam, our journey through the Pax Mongolica reveals another profound and often unexpected facet of the Mongol Empire's influence. Religious tolerance blooms. Imagine an era where, unlike many contemporary empires, people of vastly different faiths could coexist and even thrive under a single, overarching authority. This wasn't necessarily born of deep philosophical conviction, but rather a pragmatic approach to governance that remarkably fostered a period of surprising spiritual diversity and peace across a massive continent. It's like a giant, mobile interfaith picnic where everyone brings their own sacred texts and a good attitude. The Mongols, originating from an animistic and shamanistic background, generally held a pragmatic and often indifferent view towards the myriad of religions practiced within their vast empire. Their primary concern was loyalty to the great Khan and obedience to the Yasa, not the specific deities one worshipped. This approach, though rooted in political expediency, resulted in a level of religious freedom that was astonishing for the 13th and 14th centuries. This widespread religious tolerance is a mainstream historical fact attested to by numerous contemporary accounts, often to the astonishment of European chroniclers. You, as a nomad, might have seen Christian missionaries, Buddhist monks, and Muslim scholars all traveling freely, sometimes even sharing the same yam station. Under Mongol rule, Nestorian Christians could build churches, Buddhists could construct temples, Muslims could maintain their mosques, and Taoists their monasteries, often with imperial patronage, or at least protection. Unlike many European powers of the time, the Mongols rarely forced conversion and generally did not engage in large-scale religious persecutions. This policy attracted skilled artisans, scholars, and administrators from diverse religious backgrounds, all eager to serve an empire that valued their talents regardless of their faith. It's a bit like an ancient empire-wide don't ask, don't tell policy for spirituality, as long as you pay your taxes and don't plot against the Khan. A quirky or fringe tidbit illustrating this tolerance was the Mongol Khans' fascination with foreign religions and their often playful debates with religious leaders. For example, Mongol Khan, Genghis Khan's grandson, famously sponsored a great debate between Buddhist, Christian, and Muslim scholars at his court, listening intently to their arguments. While he didn't convert, his curiosity and willingness to engage were highly unusual for a ruler of his stature at that time. Imagine your powerful ruler inviting all the local spiritual leaders over for a friendly theological showdown, complete with snacks. Historians still argue whether these debates were genuinely driven by intellectual curiosity, or if they were a subtle way for the Khans to demonstrate their supreme authority over all earthly and spiritual matters. This policy had profound effects. It allowed for the unhindered flow of ideas and knowledge. Religious texts, philosophical concepts, and scientific advancements from different cultures were translated, discussed, and disseminated across the empire, enriching everyone. It also meant that the vast, multicultural population felt a greater sense of belonging and had less reason for internal rebellion based on religious grounds. For the ordinary nomad, it meant that your neighbor might worship a different god, but you could still share a meal and a friendly chat without fear of persecution. As you close your eyes, envision a mosaic of faiths flickering across the immense landscape. The quiet murmur of prayers from different traditions, the distant chime of a temple bell, the call to prayer echoing across a valley. All these sounds blend into the background hum of the steppe. The Mongol Empire, through its pragmatic embrace of religious diversity, created an unexpected sanctuary where the peaceful journey of faith could unfold freely, adding a layer of calm and understanding to the vast Eurasian world. Our journey now quietly observes the decline and dissolution. Imagine a vast empire, once unified under a singular, powerful vision, slowly beginning to fragment, not with a sudden cataclysm, but with a gradual, almost whispered fading of its centralized strength. This wasn't a swift collapse, but a complex process driven by internal rivalries, the sheer impracticality of governing such a vast territory, and the natural ebb and flow of historical power. It's like watching a magnificent sandcastle slowly, imperceptibly erode with each gentle wave. The primary factor in the Mongol Empire's dissolution was not external defeat, but internal division. The Ilkhanate in the Middle East and the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia grew increasingly independent. While they nominally recognized the Great Khan in China, their actual political and military cooperation dwindled. This fracturing into independent, often rival, entities is a mainstream historical fact that eventually led to the end of the unified empire. Maintaining control over such an enormous and diverse empire proved to be an insurmountable challenge. The sheer distances, the cultural differences, meant that local rulers increasingly asserted their autonomy. The nomadic origins of the empire, which valued mobility and decentralization, also ironically contributed to its eventual fragmentation. It was difficult to impose a rigid, permanent administrative structure on a people who, at their core, were still driven by the gentle rhythms of seasonal migration. A quirky or fringe tidbit contributing to the decline was the growing assimilation of the ruling Mongols into the cultures of the conquered lands. In China, they became more Chinese, in Persia, more Persian, and in the Golden Horde, they gradually adopted Islam and Turkic customs. While this assimilation might seem benign, it often led to a weakening of their distinct Mongol identity and, more importantly, a decline in their shared purpose and loyalty to a central Mongol authority. Imagine the descendants of fierce steppe warriors preferring silk robes and scholarly debates to riding across the plains. A subtle shift, but a significant one. Historians still argue whether this cultural assimilation was a natural, inevitable consequence of conquest, or if it indicated a failure of the Mongols to maintain their unique identity while governing sedentary peoples. Economic factors also played a role. Over time, the wealth generated by trade and tribute was often consumed by lavish courts and internal conflicts, rather than being reinvested in the empire's infrastructure or military. The Black Death, which swept through Eurasia in the mid-14th century, also dealt a devastating blow, disrupting trade routes and decimating populations, further weakening the fragmented khanates. For the ordinary nomad, these larger forces might have been felt as subtle shifts: a new local ruler, a slightly less secure trade route, or a whisper of plague from distant lands. Ultimately, the dissolution of the Mongol Empire was a slow, almost natural process of a powerful but inherently mobile force settling into a more localized existence. The grand vision of a single, unified empire faded, replaced by successor states that continued to hold power for centuries. The peaceful journey of the nomads, which had expanded into an imperial odyssey, gradually returned to a more regional focus. As you close your eyes, you see the vast, shimmering image of the empire slowly dissolving like mist, leaving behind countless, fragmented echoes across the ancient lands. Even as the grand unified empire of the Mongols faded into distinct successor states, the spirit of the steppe and the quiet wisdom of its people continued to resonate. Our journey now gently explores the echoes in modern culture, revealing how the peaceful journey of the nomads, their inventions, and their way of life still subtly influence the world we inhabit today. Imagine finding traces of ancient traditions in unexpected places, from everyday objects to vast geopolitical concepts. It's like discovering that your favorite modern comfort food actually has roots in a centuries-old nomadic recipe. Perhaps the most obvious echo lies in the horse culture. While not as dominant as it once was, the reverence for horses and the skill of horsemanship remains a mainstream historical fact deeply embedded in the cultures of Central Asia and Mongolia. Horse racing, equestrian sports, and a profound respect for these animals continue to be central to their national identities. You might watch modern documentaries showing riders galloping across the vast Mongolian plains and instantly recognize the continuity with the ancient nomads we've been exploring. It's a living tradition, a powerful link to their heritage that refuses to be relegated to history books alone. Beyond horses, the yurt, or gur, as it's known in Mongolia, is still a widely used dwelling. While often incorporating modern elements like solar panels or satellite dishes, its fundamental design remains unchanged, a testament to its ingenious efficiency and comfort. This portable home, perfectly adapted to the steppe environment, continues to house countless families, offering a quiet, sustainable way of life. You can even find modern versions of yurts sold globally as glamping tents or unique alternative housing, showing how an ancient design still serves a contemporary purpose. A quirky or fringe tidbit revealing a subtle echo is the surprising impact of Mongol military tactics on later warfare. While the empire dissolved, the lessons of their highly mobile, disciplined cavalry, their use of feints and encirclement, and their sophisticated communication systems were studied and adapted by later armies across Eurasia. Even centuries later, military strategists would pore over accounts of Mongol campaigns, seeking to understand their success. Imagine Napoleon or Clausewitz reading ancient accounts of Mongol maneuvers, quietly taking notes on how to be more mobile and decisive. Historians still argue whether the direct transfer of these tactical ideas was through explicit documentation or simply through observation and adaptation by those who encountered Mongol successor states. The concept of a vast, interconnected landmass, often referred to as Eurasia, gained new significance during the Pax Mongolica. The unified rule, however fleeting, demonstrated the potential for continent-wide interaction, setting a precedent for future trade and political relations. The very idea of a global world, albeit an ancient one, was put into practice by the Mongols, subtly shaping our understanding of interconnectedness. Even in language, whispers remain. Many Turkic and Mongol loanwords have subtly seeped into the vocabularies of neighboring cultures, a quiet testament to centuries of interaction. And the legacy of religious tolerance, though imperfectly practiced, offered a powerful counter-narrative to the religious strife often seen elsewhere, subtly influencing later ideas of pluralism. As you close your eyes, you can almost see the faint outlines of the past superimposed on the present. The peaceful journey of the nomads continues, not always in grand migrations, but in the enduring designs of their homes, the spirit of their horses, and the subtle, often unseen, influence they've had on the vast tapestry of human history. The steppe whispers, and its echoes reverberate across time. As we journey deeper into the timeless influence of the steppe, we encounter people who, even today, embrace a variation of that ancient rhythm, modern nomadic lifestyles. Imagine communities for whom movement isn't a relic of the past, but a cherished practical way of life, adapting ancestral traditions to a rapidly changing world. These aren't just historical echoes. They are living examples of how the peaceful journey of movement continues, albeit with the occasional solar panel or smartphone mixed in with the horses. It's like discovering that your favorite historical reenactment group actually just lives that way all the time. In Mongolia, for example, a significant portion of the population, even in the 21st century, continues to live a semi-nomadic or fully nomadic pastoral lifestyle. This persistence of the nomadic way of life, adapting rather than abandoning tradition, is a mainstream historical fact that makes Mongolia unique. You can still see vast herds of livestock grazing the open plains, tended by families living in traditional gers. While their lives are certainly influenced by modern technology, motorcycles might replace some horses for herding, and cell phones connect them to distant markets or family members. The core principles remain. The rhythm of the seasons, the welfare of the animals, and the communal bonds are still paramount. These modern nomads continue to rely on their livestock for sustenance, moving their gers several times a year to find fresh pastures, much like their ancestors did. They still process milk into rol and kumi, and meat remains a staple of their diet. This deep connection to the land and their animals provides a refreshing contrast to the often disconnected urban existence many of us lead. You might witness a family meticulously dismantling their ger, packing it onto a truck, and then reassembling it with remarkable speed at their new camp. It's a testament to the enduring efficiency of the design. A quirky or fringe tidbit in modern nomadic life is the ingenious integration of modern technology without losing their traditional essence. Solar panels often adorn the outside of gers, powering a single light bulb, a small television, or a phone charger. Motorcycles help them cover wider areas more quickly for herding, and some even use drones for locating lost animals. Imagine an ancient warrior on a horse, now with a drone buzzing overhead. It's a fascinating blend of old and new. Historians still argue whether these technological adoptions represent a gradual erosion of traditional culture or a clever, pragmatic adaptation that ensures its continued survival in the modern era. The challenges for modern nomads are different, but still significant. Climate change, overgrazing, and the pressures of urbanization all threaten their traditional way of life. Yet their resilience, their deep knowledge of the land, and their strong community bonds allow them to navigate these complexities. There's a quiet determination in their continued choice to live this way, a preference for the freedom of the open steppe over the confines of city life. For many, this lifestyle offers a profound sense of self-sufficiency and independence. They are less reliant on external systems and more attuned to the natural world. It's a powerful reminder that there are alternative ways to live, paths less trodden by the majority, yet full of their own unique satisfactions. As you close your eyes, you can almost hear the faint hum of a solar panel mixed with the timeless sound of sheep grazing, a harmonious blend of past and present. The peaceful journey continues, reinventing itself for a new age, but holding fast to the ancient wisdom of the wind and the open sky. From the tangible reality of modern nomads, our journey now expands to a more ethereal concept, the steppe's enduring mystique. Imagine a vast, seemingly empty landscape that somehow continues to captivate human imagination, drawing artists, writers, and travelers into its boundless embrace. This isn't just about history, it's about the deep, almost spiritual connection that this ancient land evokes, a sense of profound freedom and untamed beauty that resonates with something primal within us. It's like a quiet, persistent whisper from the earth itself, inviting you to listen. The sheer scale of the steppe is often overwhelming, a panorama of endless horizons and immense skies that humbles the human spirit. This vastness, far from being barren, holds a subtle, intricate beauty. The delicate wildflowers blooming after a spring rain, the golden waves of grass rippling under the summer sun, the stark, crystalline beauty of a winter landscape. This unique geographical feature, a continuous belt of grassland stretching across Eurasia, is a mainstream historical fact that has shaped cultures for millennia. Yet its quiet power often goes unnoticed by those who prefer more dramatic landscapes. You might feel a profound sense of calm standing in its midst, a quiet understanding of your own small place in the grand scheme of things. The mystique also lies in its history, a history of empires rising and falling like the seasons, of legendary warriors and peaceful herders, all leaving only the faintest imprint on the resilient land. The steppe holds stories in its dust, echoes in its winds, a silent archive of human endeavor and natural resilience. It's a place where you can almost feel the presence of countless generations who have lived and moved under the same boundless sky, connecting you to a lineage of quiet wanderers. A quirky or fringe tidbit contributing to the steppe's mystique is the phenomenon of singing sands or whispering dunes found in some desert steppe transitional zones. These aren't just ordinary dunes. When the conditions are right and the wind blows across them, they produce a low, haunting hum or even a loud, resonating roar, almost as if the desert itself is singing. Imagine hearing the earth hum a deep, resonant tune as you drift off to sleep. It's an otherworldly experience that adds to the almost magical quality of the landscape. Historians still argue whether ancient nomads attributed spiritual significance to these singing sands, or if they simply accepted them as another intriguing phenomenon of their vast world. The romantic image of the free-spirited nomad, unbound by walls and cities, continues to hold a powerful allure in modern times. In a world increasingly dominated by urban sprawl and digital screens, the idea of a simple life lived in direct communion with nature, moving with the seasons, offers a profound sense of escape and authenticity. It taps into a primal longing for freedom and a connection to something larger than ourselves. You might find yourself dreaming of wide open spaces, far from the hurried pace of modern life, a quiet yearning for the rhythm of the steppe. The vast emptiness of the steppe, far from being desolate, is filled with a unique kind of peace. It's a silence that allows for introspection, a landscape that encourages contemplation, and a history that whispers rather than shouts. Its enduring mystique is not about grand monuments or bustling cities, but about the quiet power of nature, the resilience of the human spirit, and the timeless call of the open road. As you close your eyes, you feel the gentle pull of that boundless horizon, a timeless invitation to quiet reflection and profound rest. Carried by the gentle breeze across the vast plains, our journey now turns to the profound wisdom gleaned from this ancient way of life. Whispers of ancient wisdom. Imagine lessons not taught in books or lectures, but embedded in the daily rhythms, the connection to nature, and the practical challenges of survival on the steppe. This isn't just history, it's a timeless philosophy, offering insights into resilience, contentment, and the true meaning of essential living. It's like finding a profound, calming life coach in the form of an incredibly old, wise camel. One of the most powerful lessons is that of adaptability. The nomads learned to embrace change, not merely endure it. The shifting seasons, the unpredictable weather, the constant search for new pastures. These weren't obstacles, but inherent parts of their existence. Their ability to pack up their entire home and move at a moment's notice fostered a mindset of flexibility and non-attachment. This inherent adaptability is a mainstream historical fact that allowed nomadic cultures to thrive in environments where sedentary societies struggled. You, as a nomad, would learn to flow with life's currents, understanding that rigidity often leads to hardship, while flexibility brings peace. Another whisper of wisdom is the deep respect for nature. Living so intimately with the land, dependent on its bounty and vulnerable to its harshness, instilled a profound reverence for the natural world. They understood that they were part of an interconnected ecosystem, not its masters. This respect extended to their animals, seen not just as resources, but as partners in survival. It's a bit like living in a giant, beautiful garden where every creature, every plant has a place and a purpose, and you're just one part of the vibrant tapestry. A quirky or fringe tidbit in their wisdom was the concept of doing without. In a world of scarcity and constant movement, material possessions were minimal. This wasn't necessarily a choice born of philosophical asceticism, but of pragmatic necessity. Yet, it led to a profound understanding of what truly matters: family, community, health, and freedom. The lack of excess fostered a deep appreciation for the simple things. Imagine finding contentment not in accumulating more, but in needing less, a radical idea in our consumer-driven world. Historians still argue whether this minimalist approach was truly a source of contentment, or if it often masked deeper hardships and desires for luxury items. The wisdom of patience also permeated their lives, waiting for the grass to grow, for the animals to fatten, for the storms to pass. Life on the steppe demanded a profound stillness of spirit. There were rhythms that could not be rushed, and trying to force them would only lead to trouble. This quiet acceptance of natural timing, a lesson in surrendering to forces beyond one's control, can be incredibly calming. You'd learn to observe, to anticipate, and to trust in the cycles of the world. Finally, there's the wisdom of self-reliance, balanced with interdependence. While individual nomads were incredibly capable, their survival ultimately depended on the strength of their family and tribal bonds. They learned the power of mutual aid, of sharing resources, and of supporting one another through hardship. It's a beautiful dance between individual strength and communal solidarity, where everyone knows their role and contributes to the well-being of the whole. As you close your eyes, you hear these whispers of ancient wisdom, soft and persistent, guiding you towards a deeper understanding of life's quiet flow and the peaceful journey within. From the whispers of ancient wisdom, our journey now gently approaches its culmination, focusing on one of the most profound lessons the nomads subtly impart: the art of moving on. Imagine a way of life where permanence is an illusion, where every dwelling is temporary, and where the act of departing is as natural as arriving. This isn't just about physical migration. It's a metaphor for embracing change, letting go, and finding peace in the ebb and flow of existence. It's like being a master of cosmic decluttering, constantly shedding what is no longer needed to make space for the new. For the nomad, the concept of a fixed home, a place where roots run deep and unmoving was foreign. Their home was where their yurt was, and their yurt was wherever their herds found good pasture. This constant, gentle displacement, the ritual of dismantling and reassembling their lives, fostered an innate understanding that everything is impermanent. This fundamental aspect of their mobile existence is a mainstream historical fact that profoundly shaped their worldview, creating a culture less tethered to material possessions or specific locations. You would learn not to cling too tightly to anything, knowing that soon you would simply move on. This acceptance of impermanence translated into a surprising resilience. When pastures dried up or a season was harsh, there was no dwelling to abandon, no fixed fields to lament. You simply moved. This allowed for adaptability and survival in a challenging environment. It's a bit like having a reset button for your life that you press every few weeks, allowing you to continually seek fresh opportunities and leave past difficulties behind. There's a profound liberation in knowing that if something isn't working, you have the option to simply move your entire life to a better place. A quirky or fringe tidbit related to this moving on ethos was the nomadic approach to conflict resolution. While we discussed early steppe warfare, a common, often peaceful, resolution to intractable disputes between groups was simply for one to move away, seeking new territory or avoiding prolonged, costly conflict. This vote with your feet mentality was a unique form of peaceful protest or strategic withdrawal, a way to de-escalate tensions by physically removing oneself from the source of friction. Imagine settling a neighborhood dispute by one family simply packing up their entire house and moving to a different continent. Historians still argue whether this tendency to disperse was a sign of weakness or a sophisticated strategy for preserving resources and minimizing bloodshed. The act of moving on also extended to their relationship with the past. While they honored their ancestors and traditions, there was less emphasis on monumental architecture or permanent historical markers. Their history was carried in their memories, their songs, and their shared identity, not in stone buildings. This made them incredibly light-footed, unburdened by the weight of fixed historical sites. You learned that the past lives not in structures, but in the stories you tell and the values you uphold. As you close your eyes, you feel the gentle sway of the yurt, perhaps imagining the next dawn when it will be carefully taken down, loaded, and moved to a new, promising location. There's a quiet strength in this continuous journey, a profound lesson in letting go, in embracing the transient nature of life, and in finding peace, not in what stays, but in the graceful art of moving on. The steppe, in its vastness, teaches you that the true home is not a place, but the journey itself. As the last echoes of our journey across the vast Mongol steppe begin to fade, we arrive at our final destination. Sweet dreams, peaceful journey. Imagine the quiet tranquility that settles over the land as night fully embraces it, a stillness broken only by the softest of sounds. We've traversed centuries and vast distances together, exploring a way of life that, despite its apparent simplicity, holds profound lessons in resilience, connection, and the gentle art of living in harmony with the world. You have, in essence, become a quiet observer in a timeless landscape, learning from the whispers of the wind and the ancient rhythms of the earth. You've felt the vastness of the steppe, an endless horizon that promises both freedom and introspection. You've understood the symbiotic relationship with the animals, especially the magnificent horse, which was not just a beast of burden, but a partner in life, a silent companion on countless journeys. You've curled up in the warmth of a yurt, that ingenious, portable home, a testament to practical design and cozy comfort, a space that breathed with the life of the family within it. You can almost feel the softness of the felt, the gentle warmth from the central hearth, keeping the chill of the vast night at bay. We journeyed through their daily routines, the simple yet incredibly efficient ways they found sustenance, turning milk into long-lasting provisions and meat into portable fuel. You appreciated their functional yet subtly adorned clothing, designed for utility and survival in an unforgiving environment. You learned about the strength of their tribal bonds, the intricate webs of family and clan that provided security and identity in a world without permanent settlements. These invisible ties, woven from shared experiences and mutual support, were as strong as any physical barrier. We even touched upon the gentle flow of trade along the Silk Road, how distant goods and ideas found their way onto the steppe, subtly enriching lives and connecting them to a wider world. And we paused to consider those moments of early steppe warfare, understanding that conflict, when it came, was often about resources and survival, a pragmatic and mobile approach to dispute resolution, often swift and focused. Then, the almost unbelievable rise of the great Khans, figures who, through sheer force of will, brought an unlikely peace to the fragmented steppe, leading to the remarkable Pax Mongolica, an era where trade and intellectual exchange truly bloomed, facilitated by the astonishing postal system of dreams. It's hard to imagine, even now, how such a vast territory could be governed so efficiently from a distance. You learned about the surprising religious tolerance that allowed diverse faiths to flourish under the Mongol banner, a truly unique aspect of their rule. And then the slow, quiet dissolution of that mighty empire, a gentle fading rather than a catastrophic fall, as internal divisions and the sheer scale of governance took their toll. Yet, even in this fading, the echoes in modern culture remain, from the enduring use of yurts to the continued reverence for horses, and the subtle ways their history continues to shape the lands they once roamed. Finally, we reflected on the whispers of ancient wisdom, the lessons in adaptability, respect for nature, and the gentle art of moving on, of letting go, understanding that true peace often comes from embracing impermanence. The Nomads teach us that life is a journey, not a destination, and that contentment can be found in the rhythm of perpetual motion. As you now drift further, you are surrounded by the vast quietness of the steppe night. The stars above are impossibly bright, a million tiny pinpricks of light in the inky blackness, just as they have been for millennia, for the Nomads sleeping below them. You can almost hear the soft, rhythmic breathing of the animals nearby, the occasional rustle of felt in the gentle breeze, and the faint, almost imperceptible hum of the ancient land beneath you. Let these peaceful sounds and images accompany you now as your mind finds its own quiet pasture. Feel yourself growing heavier, sinking deeper into the comfort of your bed. As the stories of the peaceful journey of the Nomads across the Mongol steppe lull you into a profound and restful sleep, let go of any lingering thoughts of your day and simply surrender to the calm. The journey is complete,